Your daughter. She's scared. Mommy. Bad. The parrot Luro's sharp cry tore through the mansion's silence, making magnate Arthur Deas's heart leap. Arthur, accustomed to his bird's funny remarks, felt a chilling shiver. Luro flapped his wings frantically, pointing towards little Luna's room, where Arthur's stunning wife, Isabella, claimed she was sleeping soundly. But there was something in the animal's desperate gaze, in the broken tone of its voice, that screamed truth. "What do you mean, Loro?" Arthur whispered, feeling a knot in his throat as Luna's bedroom door seemed to draw him in like an abyss. And what he would find inside would turn his world upside down. Arthur's hand trembled on the cold doorknob. Every fiber of his being screamed at him to believe Isabella in the image of a devoted mother she had always projected. But the despair in Luro's eyes, the parrot clinging to his shirt, repeating, "Luna, scared," was a disturbing echo that couldn't be ignored. He pushed the door open. Luna's room was impeccable, the bed made, empty. A chill hit him. Isabella had said Luna was sleeping soundly. Where was his daughter? He took a step, his eyes sweeping the room. No child there. The unsettling perfection of a magazine room, not a child's sanctuary. "Arthur, my love, what are you doing here?" Isabella's voice reached him from the doorway, with a gentle smile, but her eyes dark. "Luna is sleeping. You'll wake her." Luro, on Arthur's shoulder, chirped loudly, "Mommy! Bad, Luna! Not here!" Isabella laughed, a light musical sound. "Oh, Luro and his mischief, he must have dreamt it. Come, darling, let's let her rest." She extended her hand, but Arthur didn't take it. His eyes fixed on the empty bed. "Isabella," he began, his voice hoarse, "where is Luna? The bed is empty." "Oh, Arthur, she must have snuck into my room. You know how attached she is to me." Isabella tried to sound nonchalant, but Arthur noticed a tension. "No, Isabella, Luro said she's scared, and that you are bad." Arthur felt the audacity of his own words, the shattering of a trust he thought was unshakable. His heart pounded, filled with rage and dread. He watched Isabella, searching for any crack in her mask of perfection. Isabella's face twisted in hurt. "Arthur, how can you believe a bird? He's just an animal. It's absurd. You're tired, my love. We'll talk about this tomorrow, with a clear head." She tried to guide him out of the room, but Arthur remained motionless. Luro, on his shoulder, pecked his ear urgently. "Basement! Basement! Luna! There!" The word basement hit Arthur like lightning. A basement. They didn't have a secret basement in the mansion, or at least he didn't remember one. The idea was grotesque. He looked at Isabella, who now seemed pale, her eyes wide for an instant before she composed herself. "Basement? What nonsense, Luro. There's no basement here, Arthur. You know that." Her voice was a little louder, a little more forced. But Arthur saw the change in her demeanor and how she avoided his gaze. Luro's insistence, the emptiness of Luna's room, Isabella's reaction. It all came together, forming distrust. The image of his daughter, alone and scared, tore at his heart. He needed to act, and he needed to be discreet. He couldn't alarm Isabella any further. "Perhaps you're right, my love," Arthur said, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He turned to Luro, stroking his feathers. "Luro, you need to rest. So do I." He felt the weight of the pretense in his own words. "I'll look for Luna in your room, Isabella. She must be there." Isabella relaxed, a sigh of relief escaping her lips. "Yes, of course. Good night, Arthur." She smiled again, but to Arthur, that smile now seemed like a cold mask, hiding something terrible. He left Luna's room, Luro still on his shoulder, his mind buzzing. The investigation had begun. He would uncover the truth, whatever the cost, and God help him if Luro was truly right. Arthur walked down the corridor, the sound of his own footsteps seeming to echo the accelerated beat of his heart. Luro, still on his shoulder, remained strangely silent, as if understanding the gravity of the moment. The image of Isabella's forced smile, the sudden paleness on her face when the word basement was uttered, etched itself into Arthur's mind as a grim warning. He needed to be cunning. He couldn't let Isabella perceive his distrust. Luna's life depended on it. Reaching the master bedroom, Arthur forced himself to maintain composure. Isabella was already sitting at her dressing table, brushing her long blonde hair, a nightly beauty ritual that always calmed him. Today, however, every movement of hers seemed calculated, every strand of hair a veil to hide the truth. "Luna isn't here, Isabella," he said, his voice sounding more controlled than he felt. "She must have had a nightmare and gone back to her room. I'll check again." Isabella turned, a look of feigned concern in her blue eyes. "Oh, my love, what a shame. She's so sensitive. Let her sleep. Tomorrow morning you'll find her playing in the garden as always." She stood up and walked to Arthur, placing her hand on his arm. Her touch, once so comforting, now felt cold and distant. "You're so tired, Arthur. Leave these worries for tomorrow." Luro, who had been quiet until then, stirred on Arthur's shoulder. "Garden! No! Basement! Basement!" The bird pecked Arthur's ear with an urgency that made the millionaire flinch. Isabella quickly withdrew her hand, a flash of irritation crossing her face before she disguised it with a smile. "Luro, you naughty bird! Always making up stories. Arthur, don't listen to him. He just wants attention." Arthur nodded, forcing a smile back. "Of course, my love. He's a joker. But I need to make sure Luna is all right. I'll take one last look in her room." He disengaged from Isabella's touch, feeling a chill. With each passing second, the certainty that something was terribly wrong with Luna grew. He returned to the corridor, but instead of going to Luna's room, Arthur went down the main stairs, pretending to go to the kitchen for a drink of water. His plan was simple: use the night to investigate. The mansion was vast, with wings he rarely visited, trusting the staff for maintenance. If there was a secret basement, Isabella would have to have a reason to hide it. His eyes swept the darker corners, the service doors that led to pantries and storage rooms. Luro, now calmer, watched with his intelligent eyes, turning his head. Basement. Dark. Luna. Cries. The parrot's words were hoarse whispers, but clear enough for Arthur. Arthur's heart tightened. Cries. His little Luna. Crying. He remembered an old door, almost hidden behind a bookshelf in the library he rarely used. A door that Isabella had always discouraged him from opening, saying it was just an old, dusty storage room. The memory hit him with the force of a punch. He had never questioned it. How could he have been so blind? Arthur reached the library, the smell of old books and aged wood filling the air. The bookshelf was imposing, filled with volumes he had never read. Carefully, he pushed the heavy piece of furniture, revealing a dark wooden door, almost invisible in the dim light. The doorknob was cold to the touch, and a faint creak echoed when he turned it. The darkness beyond seemed to suck in the light, and cold, damp air escaped, bringing with it a smell of mold and despair. Luro, on his shoulder, let out a sharp cry. "Luna! There! Help!" Arthur felt fear chill his veins. He was on the right track. The truth was about to be revealed, and he wasn't ready for what he would find. The weight of guilt for his blindness crushed him. He turned on his phone's flashlight, the beam of light trembling in his hand, and took the first step into the darkness. Arthur descended the cold stone steps, the trembling light of his phone struggling against the oppressive darkness. The air was heavy, laden with a strong smell of mold and dampness that scratched his throat. Each step echoed in the sepulchral silence, amplifying the erratic beat of Arthur's heart. Luro on his shoulder remained strangely quiet now, only his small claws tightening on Arthur's shirt, a mute sign of his own apprehension. Guilt gnawed at him, a bitter feeling of having failed as a father, as a husband, for not having noticed what was happening under his own roof. How could he have been so blind, so absorbed in his business, to the point of ignoring the signs, to the point of trusting a smile that now seemed so wicked? The beam of light danced across the rough stone walls, revealing cobwebs and accumulated dust in every corner. The basement was much larger than he had imagined, a labyrinth of shadows and silence. "Luna! Luna! My daughter!" Arthur called, his voice choked with fear and hope. The echo of his own name was the only answer. He moved forward, passing dusty boxes and furniture covered with white sheets, each shadow seeming to hide an even darker secret. The cold penetrated his bones, but it was the cold in his soul that tormented him most. Suddenly, Luro let out a low chirp, almost a lament, and pecked Arthur's neck, pointing with his head to a more distant corner where the darkness was even denser. Arthur followed the indication, his heart beating like a war drum. As he approached, the beam of light revealed a small figure huddled on the floor, hugging her knees. It was Luna, his little Luna. The air seemed to be sucked from Arthur's lungs. The girl, once so vibrant and full of life, was pale, her hair matted and her pajamas dirty. Her large blue eyes, usually full of sparkle, were fixed on emptiness, rimmed with dry tears. A thin, torn blanket was her only protection against the cold floor. Beside her, a plate with remnants of dried food and an empty glass. There were no toys, no warmth, just the coldness of the stone and loneliness. "Luna," Arthur whispered, his voice almost inaudible. He knelt, extending a trembling hand. The girl didn't react immediately, seeming lost in her own world of fear. Luro flew from Arthur's shoulder, landing softly on the floor near Luna, and let out a soft murmur. "Luna! Daddy! Here!" Hearing the parrot's familiar voice, Luna's eyes finally moved, meeting her father's. A small sob escaped her lips, and then, as if the barrier of her terror had broken, she threw herself into Arthur's arms, crying convulsively, "Daddy! Daddy!" Arthur held her tight, feeling the fragility of her body, the tremor of her fear. Tears streamed freely down his face, mixing with his daughter's hair. Rage bubbled in his chest, a cold and relentless fury against Isabella, who had orchestrated such cruelty. How could a mother do this to her own daughter? The image of Isabella, with her perfect smile and cold eyes, now fit the figure of a monster. He lifted her into his arms, feeling Luna's light and fragile weight. She clung to him like a shipwrecked survivor to a life raft, her face hidden in his shoulder. Luro flew back to Arthur's shoulder, rubbing his head against his cheek as if offering solace. Arthur climbed the steps, each one a painful reminder of his failure. He carried not only his daughter, but the weight of a devastating truth. The life of apparent perfection he had built was a facade, and the woman he loved was the personification of evil. From that moment on, his sole mission would be to protect Luna and ensure that Isabella paid for every tear, for every moment of terror she inflicted upon his innocent daughter. Justice would be served, and the true wealth of his life, his family, would be restored, whatever the cost. Arthur emerged from the darkness of the basement, little Luna nestled in his arms, her fragile body still trembling. The contrast between the cold, damp air from where they came and the gentle warmth of the library was stark, but the warmth in Arthur's chest was one of icy fury. Luro, on his shoulder, seemed to share the pain of the moment, his unusual silence more eloquent than any words. Every step Arthur took resonated with the promise of an inevitable confrontation. He ascended the main staircase, his eyes fixed on the upper floor. where Isabella probably awaited him, oblivious to the approaching storm. Luna, her face hidden in his neck, sobbed softly, a sound that tore Arthur's heart to pieces. Reaching the bedroom corridor, Arthur saw the master bedroom door ajar. Isabella was inside, probably imagining that he had calmed down and that the charade would continue. He took a deep breath, trying to control the trembling in his hands and the rage that threatened to explode. He needed to be strong for Luna. With his daughter still firmly in his arms, he pushed the door open. Isabella was sitting at her dressing table, finishing applying a night cream, her reflection in the mirror looking as serene and perfect as ever. Seeing him, she turned, a soft smile on her lips. "Arthur, my love, you took your time. Did you find Luna? I told you she'd be fine." Her voice was a sweet murmur, but her eyes, as they fixed on the pale, frightened figure in Arthur's arms, lost all their sparkle. The smile faltered, and a shadow of panic crossed her face. "Yes, Isabella, I found her," Arthur said, his voice low and laden with a pain he didn't try to hide. He took a step forward, revealing Luna in all her fragility. "I found her where you hid her, in the basement, alone, scared." The words fell like heavy stones in the silence of the room. Luro on his shoulder squawked, "Basement! Mommy! Bad!" Isabella's face paled, the color draining away like water. She stood up, her hands trembling. "What are you talking about, Arthur? This is absurd." Luna was sleeping. She must have had a nightmare, and you scared her with your fabrications. Her voice rose a tone, the usual melody replaced by a shrill note of desperation. She tried to approach, extending her hand to Luna, but Arthur recoiled. "Don't touch her," he growled, his voice now firm and cold. "Don't you dare touch our daughter. I saw Isabella. I saw what you did. The basement, the filth, the fear in her eyes. How could you? How could you do this to our own daughter?" Tears welled in Arthur's eyes, not from sadness, but from deep disappointment and rage. "You are a monster, Isabella. A monster with a perfect smile." Isabella recoiled, her eyes wide, the mask of perfection finally crumbling. No, Arthur, you're mistaken. I just wanted her to be stronger, to stop stealing you from me. She was always your favorite. You never gave me the same attention." The words gushed from her, a torrent of jealousy and resentment that Arthur had never imagined. The truth, cruel and painful, was there, exposed. Arthur held Luna even tighter against him, feeling her small body flinch. Jealousy of his own daughter, it was unbelievable, a betrayal that tore at his soul. "Your cruelty knows no bounds, Isabella. You don't deserve to be called a mother, and I was too blind to see," he said, the pain in his voice palpable, a mixture of sadness and fury. "But this ends now. Luna will never feel fear again, and you will pay for every moment of suffering you inflicted upon her." The determination in his eyes was unshakable. The path ahead would be difficult and painful, but Arthur knew that the true battle for his family was just beginning. He would protect Luna, whatever the cost. With Luna still nestled in his arms, Arthur turned, ignoring Isabella, who now looked like a statue of pale marble, her mouth slightly agape in shock and disbelief. The perfect smile had vanished, revealing a frightened and unmasked woman. Luro, on his shoulder, let out a soft chirp, like a lament of victory and relief. Arthur left the master bedroom, the door closing softly behind him, sealing Isabella's fate and opening a new, uncertain chapter for him and his daughter. He walked down the corridor, each step an act of redemption, feeling Luna's light weight and the heavy burden of his own guilt. The first priority was Luna. Arthur took her to one of the guest rooms, away from the environment that had been the scene of so much suffering. With a tenderness he had rarely allowed himself to show, he carefully placed her on the soft bed. Luna still trembled, her large, frightened eyes fixed on him, but a glimmer of hope was beginning to emerge. "Daddy, don't leave me," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "Never again, my love," Arthur promised. Tears streaming down his face again as he stroked her matted hair. Luro flew to the headboard, observing the scene with an intelligence that seemed to transcend that of a mere bird. Arthur asked the housekeeper, Donna Clara, a trusted woman who had worked in the mansion for decades, to prepare a warm bath and a light meal for Luna. He didn't mention the basement, only that Luna had had a terrible nightmare. Donna Clara, with her experienced gaze, perceived the gravity of the situation in Arthur's eyes and in the girl's fragility, but remained discreet, offering silent comfort. While Luna was being cared for, Arthur dialed the number of his trusted lawyer, Dr. Almeida. Arthur's voice was firm but laden with deep pain. "I need you here, Dr. Almeida. It's urgent. It involves Isabella and Luna. It's about my daughter's safety." The night dragged on, heavy and full of painful decisions. Arthur sat beside Luna as she slept, her small hand firmly holding his finger. He watched his daughter's gentle breathing, promising himself that he would never again leave her unprotected. The image of Isabella, with her confession of jealousy, still burned in his mind. It was a wound that would take time to heal, a betrayal that had shaken the foundations of his life. But looking at Luna, he knew there was something more important than the pain: healing, rebuilding, and ensuring a safe and loving future for his daughter. At dawn, the first rays of sun invaded the room, bringing new hope. Arthur felt a renewed determination. Justice would be served not for revenge, but to protect Luna and for Isabella to face the consequences of her actions. The mansion, once a symbol of his perfect life, was now a reminder of the charade. But, with Luna by his side and Luro's silent loyalty, Arthur knew that true wealth lay in family and that he would do whatever it took to restore peace and happiness in their hearts. The path would be long, but he was ready. Dawn brought not only light, but a painful clarity for Arthur. He was ready for the long and arduous journey ahead. With Luna sleeping peacefully, for the first time in a long time, in Donna Clara's arms, who cradled her with soft lullabies, Arthur felt a small relief, but the determination in his chest was unshakable. He descended the stairs, Luro on his shoulder, the bird quieter than usual, as if understanding the gravity of what was to come. Dr. Almeida, his lawyer, was already waiting for him in the living room, his expression grave. He was a middle-aged man with graying hair and a keen gaze, known for his impeccable ethics and discretion. "Arthur, what happened? Your voice on the phone." "I was worried," the lawyer began, standing to greet him. Arthur gestured for him to sit, his mind still processing the night's events. He narrated everything, from Luro's first warnings to the discovery of Luna in the basement, Isabella's confession. Every word was a dagger in his own heart, but he needed to be precise. Dr. Almeida listened attentively, his eyes narrowed, occasionally making notes in a small pad. Luro, during the narration, let out soft chirps, as if confirming every detail. "It's a very serious situation, Arthur," Dr. Almeida finally said, closing his pad. "Abandonment of a minor, mistreatment, and the fact that she is the biological mother exacerbates everything. We need to act cautiously, but firmly. The priority is Luna's safety and well-being." He explained the legal procedures, the need for a detailed medical report for Luna, the importance of witnesses. Luro, though unusual, could be an element to consider, given his perceptiveness. Arthur nodded, absorbing every instruction. He felt the weight of the world on his shoulders, but the image of Luna, fragile and scared, gave him strength. As they discussed the next steps, a loud noise from upstairs interrupted the conversation. It was Isabella. She had been confined to the master bedroom, with the door locked from the outside, under the supervision of a discreet security guard Arthur had hastily hired. The plan was to keep her isolated while legal proceedings were initiated, to prevent any attempt to escape or manipulate. But Isabella was not one to give up easily. The sounds of objects being thrown and muffled screams reached the living room. "She's trying to get attention," Dr. Almeida observed, his voice calm. "It's to be expected. A woman in her position, accustomed to control, won't accept this without a fight." Arthur felt a chill. He knew Isabella was cunning, but the depth of her cruelty still shocked him. Suddenly, Arthur's phone rang. It was an unknown number. He hesitated, but answered. "Arthur Diaz," he said, his voice tense. On the other end, a female voice, which he recognized with a cold shock, spoke. "Arthur, my dear, you think you can imprison me, that you can silence me. You don't know who you're dealing with." It was Isabella, but how? How had she gotten a phone? "I have my ways, Arthur, and you made a big mistake. I've already contacted the press. In a few hours, the world will know that the great Arthur Diaz, the impeccable businessman, is keeping his wife locked up at home, claiming a parrot's madness. They'll say you're going crazy, that you're abusing me. And Luna? Oh, Luna will be in the care of a mother who loves her, far from an unbalanced father." Isabella's voice was cold, calculating, exultant. Arthur felt his blood run cold. The press, his reputation, the scandal. She had turned the tables. This was the unexpected turning point. Isabella was not just a cruel villain, she was a ruthless strategist, and Arthur had just underestimated her. His plan for discretion had been pulverized. He looked at Dr. Almeida, who watched the scene with a mixture of surprise and concern. The battle would be much more public and dirty than Arthur had ever imagined. Arthur hung up the phone, his hand still trembling. The device seemed to burn in his palm. Dr. Almeida, with his astute gaze, perceived the gravity of the situation just from Arthur's pale and shocked expression. Luro on his shoulder let out a low squawk, like an echo of the tension in the air. She contacted the press," Arthur managed to say, his voice hoarse, almost a whisper. "She said she's going to accuse me of holding her captive, of going crazy, and that Luna will be in her care." Dr. Almeida sighed, his brow furrowed. "A reaction was to be expected, Arthur, but this is a bold maneuver. She's trying to turn the narrative in her favor, making you the villain and her the victim. It's a masterstroke in the public image war." The lawyer stood up, beginning to pace the room, his steps measured. "We need to act fast. The truth is our greatest weapon, but a lie, when well told, can be devastating. Especially when it involves a public figure like you and a child." Arthur felt a knot in his throat. The idea of his reputation being tarnished, of being seen as a monster, was secondary. What terrified him was the possibility of Isabella getting Luna back, even for a brief moment, using the press to manipulate public opinion. The image of Luna in the basement, scared and alone, burned in his mind. "What do we do?" Arthur asked, his voice firmer now, fury replacing the initial shock. "I cannot allow her to get near Luna, never again." "First, Arthur, we need to protect Luna from all this exposure," Dr. Almeida replied, stopping before him. "She has already been through too much. I suggest you take her to a safe place, far from here, with someone you completely trust. Meanwhile, we will prepare our defense. We need irrefutable evidence." Luro flew from Arthur's shoulder to the sideboard, flapping his wings and repeating urgently, "Luna, safe, away. Mommy bad." The bird seemed to understand the seriousness of the moment, its eyes fixed on Arthur. "He's right," Arthur murmured, looking at Luro. "Donna Clara, she's like a second mother to Luna. I trust her with my life." As Arthur thought about the details, the sound of police car sirens and the murmur of voices began to echo from outside the mansion. The press had wasted no time. Isabella had made good on her threat. Camera flashes began to illuminate the windows, turning the house into a stage under the spotlights. "They've arrived," Dr. Almeida said, his voice grave. "The public battle has begun. We need to be transparent but strategic. The truth needs to be revealed, but at the right time and in the right way. Arthur felt a chill down his spine. The life he knew was crumbling, but the determination to protect Luna was an inextinguishable flame in his chest. He would not be intimidated. He would not bow down. He would face Isabella and the world, if necessary, to ensure his daughter's safety and happiness. He ran up the stairs, his heart pounding. He found Donna Clara cradling Luna, who had woken up with the noise, her eyes wide. "Donna Clara, I need you to take Luna to the farm in the countryside. No one can know where you are," Arthur said, his voice urgent. "It's for her safety." Donna Clara, without questioning, simply nodded, her face marked by worry. "You can count on me, my son. Luna will be safe with me." Arthur hugged Luna tightly, kissing her hair. "Daddy loves you, my angel. Soon, everything will be all right." Luna clung to him, a small sob escaping. Arthur knew the separation would be painful, but necessary. He needed to fight for her, and for that, she needed to be away from the chaos that would ensue. As he descended, he saw Dr. Almeida already talking to the first police officers and journalists who had managed to approach the property. The mansion, once a sanctuary, was now a circus. Arthur took a deep breath, straightening his shoulders. He was ready for war. Justice for Luna, the restoration of peace in his family, was the sole objective. He would not allow Isabella's manipulation to triumph. He would do whatever it took. Arthur descended the stairs, breathing deeply and with straight shoulders, an invisible armor against the chaos that awaited him. Dr. Almeida was ahead, talking to a group of police officers and journalists who crowded at the mansion's entrance, their cameras flashing like curious and merciless eyes. Luro, on his shoulder, seemed to feel the tension, gently tightening his claws on his shirt. The murmur of voices ceased for an instant when Arthur appeared, and all eyes turned to him. It was a moment of intense scrutiny, where every gesture and expression would be dissected. "Gentlemen, please remain calm," Dr. Almeida requested, raising his hand. "My client, Arthur Diaz, will make a brief statement." Arthur felt the weight of their gazes on him, the mixture of curiosity and judgment. He took another deep breath, remembering Luna, the promise he had made to her. "Good evening, everyone," he began, his voice surprisingly firm, despite his internal tremor. "I know there are many questions and much speculation. My wife, Isabella, has made serious allegations against me. I want to make it clear that they are unfounded and that the truth will prevail." He paused, his eyes sweeping the faces before him. "My only concern at this moment is the safety and well-being of my daughter Luna. She is an innocent child who has been through difficult times and needs peace." A chorus of questions arose, voices overlapping. "Where is Mrs. Diaz, Mr. Diaz? Is it true you kept her locked up?" "What does the Parrot have to do with this?" Dr. Almeida intervened, shielding Arthur. "I ask that you respect this delicate moment. The accusations will be handled through appropriate legal channels. At the right time, all the facts will come to light." Arthur felt a pang of frustration. He wanted to shout the truth, expose Isabella's cruelty, but he knew that strategy was essential. He needed to be the image of calm and reason. Luro, as if sensing his anguish, rubbed his head against his ear, and Arthur felt a renewed surge of strength. Meanwhile, upstairs, Isabella watched the scene from her bedroom window, the door still locked. She had managed to make the call to the press using an old cell phone she had hidden, a contingency plan for emergencies. The triumphant smile she had displayed on the phone now mingled with contained rage. Arthur was there, facing them, and he seemed so upright. The image she wanted to destroy was holding up. "He won't succeed," she murmured to herself, her nails digging into her palm. "I won't lose. Luna is mine. The inheritance is mine." The fury in her gaze was cold and calculating. She knew the battle was just beginning, and she was ready to fight with all her weapons, no matter the cost. Arthur, oblivious to Isabella's thoughts, continued to face the storm of flashes and questions. He knew that the battle for public opinion would be as arduous as the legal battle. But with Luna safe, he had an unshakable purpose. He was not fighting for his reputation or his fortune, but for his daughter's innocence and for justice. That was the true value, the true wealth he had rediscovered in the depths of his own mansion. He would do whatever it took for the truth to come to light, and for Luna to finally live without fear in a home filled with love and security. The journey would be long, but he was ready for every step. Arthur and Dr. Almeida retreated into the mansion, leaving behind the frenzy of flashes and the incessant questions that still echoed in the night. The silence of the living room felt heavy, laden with the echo of the battle that had just begun. Luro, on his shoulder, nestled in, a comforting warmth amidst the cold of uncertainty. "She's cunning, Arthur," Dr. Almeida said, his voice grave as he sat down, adjusting his glasses, managing to contact the press and turn the narrative so quickly. That shows cruel planning, but we cannot lose focus. The truth is on our side. Arthur nodded, running a hand over his tired face. The image of Isabella, her perfect smile undone by rage, still haunted him. The truth, yes, but how do we present it without hurting Luna even more? She's so small, so fragile. Concern for his daughter was a constant pang in his chest. "We need an immediate restraining order, Arthur," Dr. Almeida continued, opening his briefcase. "Isabella cannot approach Luna, and we need a medical report that proves the conditions in which Luna was found. This will be crucial for the custody process and for the charges of mistreatment." He explained the procedures clearly, avoiding jargon, so Arthur would understand each step. Arthur listened, each word from the lawyer reinforcing the gravity of the situation. It was as if the life he knew was being deconstructed piece by piece, and he needed to rebuild it on foundations of justice and love. And the press? How do we deal with the image she's trying to create? For now, strategic silence is the best response, Dr. Almeida advised. Let her allegations spread a bit. The truth, when it comes out, will have a greater impact. But we need to have everything documented and irrefutable. And above all, Luna's safety is non-negotiable. The farm is a good start. Arthur felt a glimmer of hope. He picked up the phone, dialing the farm's number. Donna Clara answered, her voice soft. "How is she, Donna Clara?" Arthur asked, his heart heavy. "She's sleeping, my son. A peaceful sleep like I haven't seen in a long time," Donna Clara replied, and Arthur could feel the relief in her voice. "She asked about you, but I calmed her. I told her Daddy is taking care of everything." "Thank you, Donna Clara. Take good care of her. I trust you," Arthur said, feeling a tear roll down. The connection with Donna Clara, her loyalty, was a balm for his wounded soul. Meanwhile, in the master bedroom, Isabella, though locked in, was not inactive. She had found a second cell phone, an old device she kept for emergencies, and was already in contact with her own lawyer, a man known for his aggressiveness in high-profile litigations. The triumphant smile she had displayed on the phone had returned, cold and calculating. "He thinks he can stop me. He doesn't know what awaits him," she murmured, her eyes fixed on the locked door, imagining the repercussions of her actions in the press. The battle for public opinion was just the beginning. She planned every move, every word, to discredit Arthur and ensure Luna returned to her, and with her, the inheritance she so desired. Arthur, oblivious to Isabella's Machiavellian plans, felt the weight of responsibility, but also an unshakable strength. He looked at Luro, who watched him with his intelligent eyes. "We'll make it, my friend," Arthur whispered to the bird, "for Luna, for our family." The journey would be long and painful, but he was ready to face every challenge. every obstacle to ensure that justice prevailed and that Luna could live in a world of love and security, far from any shadow of cruelty. Arthur hung up the phone, relieved for Luna, but anxious for the battle. Dr. Almeida, serious, analyzed papers. "We need to be proactive, Arthur. Isabella won't stop. Her lawyer will try to paint you as the unbalanced rich man who abuses his wife and invents stories." Arthur felt a shiver. The image was repugnant, aware of the power of the media. "I cannot allow her to win, Dr. Almeida. Not for me, but for Luna. Her pain cannot be used as a weapon." His fists clenched. Luro on his shoulder chirped softly. "We won't allow it," the lawyer assured. "First action, restraining order. Isabella cannot approach Luna. In parallel, a detailed medical report. I've contacted trusted psychologists and pediatricians for the farm. Luna's privacy is paramount." Arthur nodded. Caring for Luna was a balm. "When can they go?" "Tomorrow. Donna Clara is already aware," Dr. Almeida replied. "Meanwhile, we will prepare an official statement for the court. A clear and factual narrative with evidence." The morning advanced, the Diaz scandal dominating the news portals. Arthur saw his image, once impeccable, dragged through the mud. Isabella, in a statement through her lawyer, claimed to be held captive, a victim of Arthur's psychotic breakdown, obsessed with a parrot. The words were knives, but Arthur forced himself to remain calm, remembering the strategic silence. "It's hard not to react," Arthur confessed, his eyes fixed on the television where a photo of Isabella smiling was displayed. These lies, they hurt. Dr. Almeida explained that it was Isabella's strategy to provoke him. "But we have the truth, and the truth, though slower, is more powerful. We need to be patient, but firm." At that instant, Arthur's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. "Arthur Diaz." Isabella, with scorn, mocked the news. She stated that Arthur was losing, Luna would return with her, and Arthur would be a footnote in her fortune. Her cold voice was frightening. Arthur felt rage bubbling up, but he took a deep breath for Luna. "You won't succeed, Isabella. The truth always comes out, and Luna will never return to you, I promise." He hung up, his hand trembling, determined. Dr. Almeida watched. "She's trying to destabilize you. Don't fall into the trap." "I won't," Arthur replied, his gaze fixed. "She can tarnish my name, but she won't touch Luna. I would fight for her peace and happiness, no matter the cost." Luro tightened his grip on his shirt, a gesture of support. The battle would be arduous, but a father's love was more valuable than any fortune. Ready for the next step, Arthur took a deep breath, feeling renewed strength from Luna's image. "We need to act, Dr. Almeida. We cannot wait for her to destroy us with lies." The lawyer nodded, already with the phone in hand. "Exactly. The restraining order will be issued today, and the request for Luna's temporary custody as well. Our initial evidence is strong, but her reputation is a challenge." He spoke with the calm of someone who had faced many legal storms. Arthur watched, his mind racing. Each word from the lawyer a step towards justice. Luro on his shoulder let out a soft chirp, as if encouraging him. "We need Luna's medical report as soon as possible," Arthur added, his voice laden with urgency. "It's the missing piece to unmask her once and for all." As legal proceedings began, the media buzzed with Isabella's version. She, through her lawyer, gave an exclusive interview to a major news portal, painting a dramatic picture of herself as a devoted wife, imprisoned by a jealous and mentally unstable husband. Headlines screamed about "The Millionaire and the Parrot," a story of obsession and captivity. Arthur viewed the news with a mixture of repulsion and pain. Every word was a cruel distortion of the truth, a direct attack on his sanity and his love for Luna. He felt the weight of public judgment, but the image of Luna safe on the farm was his shield against the avalanche of lies. 2 days later, Dr. Almeida arrived with a sealed envelope. It was the complete report from the doctors and psychologists who had examined Luna at the farm. Arthur opened it with trembling hands. The words were cold and technical, but the content was devastating. Signs of mild malnutrition, restraint marks on the wrists, post-traumatic stress disorder, intense fear of adult female figures, prolonged isolation. Every sentence was a blow to Arthur's heart, a brutal confirmation of his little Luna's suffering. He could feel the pain she had endured alone. A tear rolled down his face, but it was not from despair, but from a contained fury, an unshakable determination. Luro flew to the paper, flapping his wings and repeating with unusual sadness, "Luna, hurt, mommy, bad." The bird seemed to share Arthur's pain, its eyes fixed on the report. This document was the irrefutable proof, Luna's voice that Isabella had tried to silence forever. Arthur raised his eyes, the decision etched on his face, his jaw tense. Enough, we can no longer remain silent. The truth needs to come out, Dr. Almeida, no matter the scandal, no matter what they say about me. Luna deserves justice. The world needs to know what Isabella did. Dr. Almeida nodded, with a glimmer of admiration in his eyes. It's the right decision, Arthur. I've prepared a press conference for tomorrow. We will present the medical report, the restraining order, and yes, Luro's testimony. He is a peculiar witness. But his consistency and initial warnings are undeniable and can turn the tide. Arthur felt a knot in his throat. It was the most difficult moment of his life, but also the most necessary. He imagined the flashes, the questions, the judgments, but his mind was fixed on Luna, on the promise of a safe future for her. That would be the day Isabella's mask would fall once and for all, revealing the cruelty behind the perfect smile. The night that followed was long, but Arthur felt no fear. Only a resolute calm filled his chest. He was ready for war, not for wealth or reputation, but for the unconditional love of his daughter. The truth, finally, would be his most powerful voice, echoing for all to hear. He would bring justice to Luna, and to all who once believed in Isabella's charade. The climax was imminent, and Arthur was at its center, ready to fight with all his strength, with the hope of restoring peace and love in his family. The next morning dawned with a palpable tension, but Arthur felt a clarity he hadn't experienced in a long time. He was ready. Beside Dr. Almeida, he entered the hall prepared for the press conference. The flashlights exploded and the murmur of voices intensified, but Arthur kept his gaze firm. Luro nestled on his shoulder, a small point of calm amidst the storm. "Good morning, everyone," Dr. Almeida began, his voice echoing through the microphone. "We appreciate your presence. My client, Arthur Diaz, is here today to clarify the unfounded allegations made against him and, more importantly, to bring to light a painful truth involving his daughter, Luna." Arthur took a deep breath, feeling the weight of that moment. He looked at the curious faces, some skeptical, others with a hint of compassion. It was time for Luna to be heard. "My wife, Isabella, has been trying to discredit me, but the truth is that she is the one who needs to be held accountable. Luna, my 4-year-old daughter, was a victim of severe mistreatment by her own mother." A shock ran through the room. Journalists began to whisper, some with expressions of disbelief. Dr. Almeida held up a sealed envelope. "This is Luna's complete medical and psychological report. It details signs of malnutrition, restraint marks, and severe post-traumatic stress disorder. Luna was found in a secret basement of our mansion, in deplorable conditions, isolated and terrified." The words fell like stones, the flashes intensified, and questions began to overlap. How was this discovered, Mr. Diaz? Why would Mrs. Diaz do something like this? Arthur raised his hand, asking for silence. The truth came to light thanks to an unexpected and very special witness. He stroked Luro, who, as if understanding his role, flew to the podium, fixing his intelligent eyes on the crowd. Luna, scared, mommy, bad, basement, dark. Luro squawked, his words clear and laden with an almost human emotion. The silence in the room was almost absolute, broken only by the clicks of cameras. The bird repeated the phrases, and the consistency of its previously ignored warnings now fit into a shocking and undeniable narrative. Many journalists exchanged glances, surprised and intrigued. The story of the parrot that spoke the truth, once a subject of ridicule, was now the most compelling evidence. The repercussions were immediate and overwhelming. The next day's headlines no longer spoke of the crazy millionaire, but of Isabella's cruelty behind the perfect smile. Arthur's image, once tarnished, began to be restored. Public opinion, initially manipulated, turned in favor of Luna and her father. As the world digested the truth, Isabella, watching the press conference on television from her locked room, saw her universe crumble. The cold smile dissolved, replaced by an expression of fury and despair. Her lawyers, confronted with the irrefutable evidence and Luro's unusual testimony, had no way to sustain the charade. The restraining order was confirmed, and Arthur's custody request was granted. Isabella was taken to answer for her actions, facing the legal consequences of her cruelty. Far from the chaos at the farm, Luna began her slow and painful journey of recovery. Doctors and psychologists worked with care and patience. Arthur visited her every day, sitting by her side, reading stories, singing songs. He saw small smiles return to his daughter's face, a glimmer of hope in her previously frightened eyes. Luro, always present, was a comforting link, repeating, "Luna, safe, Daddy, loves." Arthur had lost his wife and part of his reputation, but he had found something far more valuable, the true essence of family, unconditional love, and justice. He learned that wealth was not in his possessions, but in his daughter's safety and happiness. That was the true treasure, rescued from the depths of cruelty and brought to light by a father's love and courage, and by the unexpected voice of a parrot. Peace, finally, began to blossom in Arthur's heart and in his little Luna's. Months passed since the press conference that turned Arthur's world upside down. The peace, which had begun to blossom in his heart and Luna's, deepened. The farm, with its open fields, became Luna's sanctuary. Away from the mansion's cold walls and the shadows of the past, the 4-year-old girl rediscovered the joy of being a child. Arthur, now a full-time father, observed his daughter's progress. He spent hours with her, building sandcastles by the stream, reading stories, and simply being present, offering his unconditional love. Luna, once withdrawn and frightened, now laughed with ease, her blue eyes sparkling. Arthur's loving presence and Donna Clara's affection were a balm for her wounded soul. Luro, the faithful parrot, was crucial in this new routine. He followed Arthur and Luna around the farm, perching on the girl's shoulder as she drew or played. His phrases, once desperate warnings, were now words of affection and encouragement. Luna, happy, Daddy, loves, family, united. Luro's voice was a reminder of the courage that had saved Luna and the truth that had set everyone free. Isabella faced justice. The evidence presented by Dr. Almeida, the medical report, and Luro's testimony were irrefutable. She was convicted of mistreatment and neglect, and Luna's custody was permanently granted to Arthur. The image of perfection she had cultivated crumbled, revealing the cruelty behind her smile. Arthur felt no joy in her downfall, only sadness for the life they could have had and gratitude that Luna was finally safe. The mansion, once a symbol of wealth, was now a place of painful memories. Arthur decided to sell it, detaching himself from the past. He no longer needed a palace to feel fulfilled. His true wealth was there, on the farm, in his daughter's arms, in the pure love that united them. He invested a large part of his fortune in social projects dedicated to child abuse victims, transforming his pain into a greater purpose, a legacy of altruism, hope, and compassion. A year later, Luna was unrecognizable. Her blonde hair swayed in the wind as she ran through the fields, chasing butterflies. She visited psychologists with light conversations and progress. Arthur, with grayer hair but a renewed sparkle in his eyes, watched her with a smile that overflowed with love. He had learned the most valuable lesson. Family is the foundation, love is the greatest fortune, and overcoming challenges is a path of courage and faith. Luro, perched on Arthur's shoulder, let out a joyful squawk. Life, new, love, wins. Arthur smiled, stroking the bird. That peculiar being, his daughter's guardian angel, the catalyst for his transformation. The journey was arduous, but truth and love prevailed. Arthur and Luna together built a future where safety, affection, and joy would be the pillars of their family. Life had shown Arthur that the greatest treasures are not kept in vaults, but in loving hearts. Life had shown Arthur that the greatest treasures are not kept in vaults, but in loving hearts, and this truth, etched in fire upon his soul, became the foundation of every new dawn on the farm. Months turned into a year and a half since Luna had been rescued, and the girl's transformation was a daily miracle. Her blonde hair, once dull, now shone like sunbeams, and her blue eyes, once filled with dread, radiated joyful curiosity. She no longer flinched at the slightest noise, and although she still had her moments of silence and reflection, Luna's laughter echoed through the fields with a frequency that filled Arthur's heart with an indescribable sweetness. Arthur, with a slightly grayer beard and worry lines, softened by a new sparkle in his eyes, had embraced fatherhood with a dedication he had never imagined himself capable of. His business meetings were now less frequent, and his time was meticulously planned to include long walks with Luna, afternoons of reading under the shade of an old mango tree, or simply watching her play with the farm animals. He taught her about plants, birds, and the importance of every living creature, instilling in her a love for nature and a gentleness that were the antithesis of the cruelty she had known. Donna Clara, the personification of wisdom and affection, was the grandmother Luna never had. She prepared the girl's favorite dishes, told stories from her own childhood, and offered a safe lap for the rare moments when the shadows of the past still tried to intrude. Her presence was a pillar of stability and unconditional love, a constant reminder that human kindness always prevails. Luro, the green-feathered hero, continued to be an essential part of the family. He followed Luna like a protective shadow, perching on her shoulder as she drew or helped Donna Clara water the flowers. His phrases, once a cry of alarm, were now songs of hope and affection. Luna, happy, daddy, loves, family, united, love, wins. The parrot's words were a balm for Luna, a living reminder of her courage and the truth that had set her free. Dr. Almeida visited the farm occasionally, no longer as a crisis lawyer, but as a friend who had witnessed the resurrection of a family. He watched Luna with a smile, satisfied with the girl's remarkable progress. The psychologists who accompanied Luna confirmed that, although the healing journey was continuous, the girl was flourishing, building new memories filled with love and security. Arthur, true to his promise, had transformed his pain into purpose. The social projects for child abuse victims, funded by his fortune, were thriving. He dedicated time and resources to ensure that other children had the chance for a safe and loving future, a legacy of altruism that extended far beyond his own family. He had learned that true wealth was not measured in material possessions, but in the capacity to love, to forgive, and to build a better world for those who needed it most. On a sunny afternoon, as Luna ran freely through the fields, Arthur watched her, a serene smile on his lips. Luro, perched on his shoulder, tilted his head. Life, new, peace, heart. Arthur stroked the bird's feathers. Life had taken much from him, but it had given him the most valuable lesson of all. Family, love, and human connection were the true treasures, capable of healing the deepest wounds and building a future of hope and joy. He was no longer just a millionaire, but a father, a protector, a man who had rediscovered the true meaning of life in his daughter's bright eyes.